Resilience University series for the summer. Today, we're going to be talking about innovation, and this is going to start to pull together and synthesize some of the other concepts that we've discussed. In particular, how to be strategic with how you innovate in order to maximize financial gain while also minimizing financial loss. So, give me 1 second. Let me make sure. There we go. Okay. We are officially live on all the channels. I just had to check and make sure. So, of course, I'm hoping that everybody is doing great today. If you catch this as a recording, I hope that you get a chance to go back and look at the other sessions as well. We are now officially at the halfway mark. So, this is 3 of 5. And I was really excited about this one. Even when I created the series, I was like, okay, I could just call something product development, but I didn't feel that it fully encapsulated everything that I was trying to communicate about this concept's importance. And so I decided to call it innovation. Now, most people think of innovation from a tech standpoint, usually SaaS companies, maybe manufacturing, sometimes even with food or healthcare. But innovation can occur in any industry and should occur in any industry. If you think about how business has evolved over the last 5 years since the start of the pandemic, the last 25 years since we entered the new millennium, in the last 50 years since the advent, or I'm sorry, the invention and the widespread use of home computers and other technology like that. And then if you think about the last century with the industrial revolution, well, now it will be 125 years, even close to 150 with the industrial revolution. Nothing looks the same. Nothing that we did years ago looks the exact same as it does today. And that's one of the first points that I wanted to make with innovation is that innovation is always happening. Sometimes it is staggered, sometimes it is incremental, sometimes it is total, and you experience something completely new, but it's always happening. The goal is for you to be a part of the creation process of innovation and not just the object of it. And what I mean by that is, especially as a business owner, by the time you are simply the object of innovation, you not only miss out on the early benefits, you also miss out on being able to drive changes that will positively impact you, and you lose out on the opportunity to be an authority. And I know that that might feel controversial because people are like, you can always have expertise. You can, but when you get to catch something early in a development or you get to catch something early in a process, I think it makes a difference in how you're able to show up in that even later as it develops more iterations. That doesn't always mean that you're in a rush to be first, but there is a power in being an early adopter to something and an early innovator. So, y'all know I love a good definition. So, what is the definition of innovation? The definition of innovation is that it is any update or evolution of a company's products, services, processes, or experiences. And again, it is the entire system of creating something new or shifting to something new. So this is the design, it is the launch, it is the iterations, it is the evaluations. All of that is a part of the process of innovation, and that is actually what we're going to discuss today is the stages, because I think some companies do innovation very well, and it is because they manage these stages well. Other companies do not do innovation very well at all. And a good example of that would be Kodak. And the ways in which photography evolved over the past 60 years, I'll say, to be on the safe side, it was so jarring to watch Kodak's brand just completely devolve, in large part because of their refusal to be an early adopter to innovations that were completely disrupting their industry. Blockbuster is another really good example. Of course, we hear about that one all the time. You hear about it from other legacy technology companies. You hear about it from legacy media brands. You hear about it in terms of cars. The people always tell the joke, whoever was still trying to push horses and buggies when the Ford Motor Company started doing this thing in the mid 20th century, I mean, you were left behind completely. And so, again, we see tons of famous examples of companies that refuse to innovate to their downfall. And I don't want that to be you. With that being said, I also want us to be honest about our capacity to innovate, because for some of us, we need to take baby steps to innovation because maybe we don't have the staff, maybe we don't have the revenue and access to technology to test, maybe we don't have the time. For example, if you work in an industry that is extremely fast paced, it takes time to innovate, and you may not have that time at your disposal with the team you currently have. And innovation does take planning. Don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm just going to blow my whole company and do something new. No, it takes time, and innovation really is a muscle that you build. So let's talk about the functional areas of innovation. And I was thinking about this part because I teach my clients, my small business clients, about functional area analysis all the time. When we do strategic planning, that is the beginning. Excuse me. And I think that's because a lot of people don't realize that there are 8 functional areas of a company. We pay attention to department names. We don't always pay attention to the functional area. And the difference between a department and a functional area is that a department is mainly for compartmentalization in a company. So I know the different departments because this job or this group of people is housed and contained in this department, under this department. But a functional area can potentially span across departments. So it can be cross departmental work, but it is designed to create impact in a particular area of the company. So there are 8, and I'm pulling it up because I want to share a screenshot of it. And I think, again, for my small business clients, I haven't had a single client who I've showed this to and they weren't like, "What? I ain't never I've never thought about this." So, again, I took a screenshot actually of a larger deck that I share with my clients. So you all should be able to see this now. But I explain to my clients that there are 8 functional areas of their company. And those 8 functional areas are strategy, HR, or sometimes it's called people or people operations, finance, legal, marketing, sales, and research and development, also known as R&D. So these 8 functional areas make up the totality of your company. Innovation can occur across any of these 8 areas or all of them. You can innovate in any of these areas. Innovations in legal could look like switching from paper signing to digitized signing. I never forget, y'all know I worked in government. And with government, I mean, the record keeping it has to be phenomenal. I know we probably don't think it happened now, but actually, the record keeping in government is incredible. And it used to be that you would have a room of documents. So there was a room in HR that had every employee file. I think on site they kept for the last 10 years. It was either 10 or 12. And then they had someplace off site that they kept like forever. And it was an actual room. And it was like an old library. So they had the thing where you had to crank the wheel. And I'll never forget the colleague who worked there. in that department. She was super old. She was real old. Even then, she had been working there for years and years, and she could call up to memory anything. I mean, it would be the most random data piece, and she'd be like, "Oh, let me go find it. I think I remember that." And I'm like, "How, girl?" But it was because she that was her job, and she took it seriously. So, again, don't forsake the ways in which you can innovate in fields like HR and legal, because things like digitization, evolving global laws, evolving federal laws, new political partnerships, new cross state partnerships can completely change how you do business. Another good example across legal and HR, employment law. So, if you are a company with a globally dispersed team, or even a company with a team that's dispersed across states, each state has different employment laws, and certain states are more employer favorable and other states are more employee favorable. So if you have part of your team that is based in Texas or Georgia, part of your team that's based in Michigan and Illinois, and part of your team that's based in California and Colorado, yeah, you have to be very thoughtful how you create your policies, because you want to be fair. So you don't want to seem like you're favoring or causing unnecessary punitive harm to one employee group or the other based on state laws, but you also have to make sure you're compliant. So that's why you'll see on job postings sometimes that they'll say, if you live in this state, this state, this state, you have a right to blah, blah, blah. If not, this is it. They'll have, excuse me, such a huge salary range sometimes, because if you do geo based compensation, it's going to vary based on what that state requires. So, again, innovation can happen for sure across legal and HR, but innovation can also happen in these other functional areas too. Of course, operations, sales. If you're thinking about AI, being able to use technology to speed up timelines, being able to leverage AI or automation in order to generate, just like basic responses. So let's say in sales, if you have a 24-hour thank you note policy that, hey, if we meet with someone and we do a discovery call, 24 hours later, we send them a note and say, thank you for meeting with us. Guess what? Having AI, having some type of automation tool can help significantly with that, because now maybe you don't have to have three coordinators, or maybe Sally Sue don't have to stay around the office 4 extra hours to send out all her thank yous. They're using a system like a Dubsado or some other type of productivity platform, where it'll automatically send that. Maybe it'll automatically send reminders. Excuse me. Sorry, y'all. My sinuses are going crazy today. Maybe on the finance side, you're getting automatic reminders about payments and invoices and payment plans. That could help speed up your accounts payable timelines, your accounts receivable timelines. So again, that innovation can happen, but it's not only in technology. And that was a point this actually came to me this morning, because I was thinking about this conversation today, and I was thinking about my own company. And one thing that we don't always consider is innovation in the customer or user experience, not just on the technology side. So I know for me, when I first, I'll say when I experienced my business boom, like at the start of the pandemic, I had to move quick to just get things to be responsive to what the market needed. And I created, actually, let me not say that, someone else created for me. First of all, let me back up. I'm sorry, because I want to show honor to the people who invested in my company by creating templates and graphics for me for free. There was a person, a young person too. Were they in college? I think they were about to go to, no, they were about to be in their senior year. And they were so kind. I mean, they made my early deck template, my early invoice template, my early proposal template, and that's what I'm about to talk about. So that's what triggered that thought. And I honestly could not have done much of the work that I did in that time period by myself. So thank you so much to that person. If they happen to bump into this, thank you so much for believing in my company at that time and being such an ardent supporter. But it was interesting because, and I'm sorry, oh Lord, my sinuses. But it was awesome because at the time, my proposal, it was a PowerPoint presentation, but it was like one slide that became a landscape oriented sheet. And it was pretty good. It did what it needed to do. But the thing was, eventually in the market, I've started to realize that for especially larger companies, it might have to go through 3 or 4 points of approval in order to get approved to start an engagement. And along the way, so maybe I talked to Jim Bob, who is an HR director. Jim Bob has to send it to their VP, who has to send it to somebody in finance, who has to send it to legal. And these folks in the other departments who I didn't talk directly to, they would ask questions like, okay, well, tell me more about the company. What's the suggested payment plan? What are the milestones? Do we already have this? How long have they been doing this? Do they have any examples or case studies? And I started to realize that I didn't have the right format for my proposal template. Also, I paid attention to the vendors that I used, and they had some amazing proposal documents. So I would ask them, I said, how you create this? What made you add this information? And they were very kind to share with me how they did what they did. So I went in Canva and I looked up what are the templates for proposals. And I was like, I need to start turning this into a multi-page book. And I need some case studies and I need to make sure that I have an about section. I'm going to put, icons of my past clients and stuff. Again, all the questions that I was getting from the second, third, and fourth degree contacts of my lead, who I would have discovery calls with. And I sat down probably like a weekend and just worked on it, edited, worked on it. And I started sending that out. And I noticed that my acquisition timelines and my timeline to contract signing shortened, sometimes by over half. So if something took 3 weeks, I could get it signed in a week and a half just from making this new proposal template. That's innovation. That's innovation. I created a new way to showcase my company that would answer questions that I now had tons of data, historical data to show, hey, the market has changed and people need to know this, this, this. How quickly can you get it to them? And it looked professional. It was, cute, nice pictures. Because again, I know my players. These are the things that who is this person? Are they kind? Do they, talk nice to people? Again, these are all things that people are asking about. And now I'm able to present that to them. And that little bit of innovation, I think, has helped my company to compete, especially now globally, because a lot of times I'm going up against larger firms, legacy firms, firms with more staff, and so they might be able to beat me on how quickly they can get something. They might be able to beat me because they got a whole team, but they can't beat me on what I've accomplished and they can't beat me on how I choose to represent my brand. So the new proposal template helps with that. So that's just one example. And that will probably fall under marketing and sales. You can also choose to innovate with the way you are tech frugal. I'll put that. So it's not just acquiring new technology. Sometimes it's about downsizing the technology that you use and combining features. I now run my whole company on Google. And shout out to Google. Let's do a partnership. But I run my whole company on Google. Um, being able to integrate things into one place has helped me a lot. I mentioned in the last episode, I cut my costs by a lot by just using what was already included in what I was being charged with Google. And those types of innovations make a difference because if you do run a lean staff, or sometimes you have staff that have different levels of technological capability, everybody isn't tech savvy. That doesn't mean that they can't do their job. It just means they might not be great at technology. Listen, you better work that and get something that people can use. That is also innovation. So again, innovation isn't always doing something new. Sometimes innovation is doing less of something or downsizing. And that might be the smartest choice for your company. Let's talk about the stages of innovation now that we know it can occur across all of these functional areas. When you think about innovation, let me stop sharing. When you think about innovation stages, there are actually 8. And the names of the stages are planning, selection, testing, launch, refinement, adoption, maintenance and management, and then the feedback loop. Okay. So you can innovate in any of those stages, and there are going to be different timelines for it. But where I've seen companies succeed or fail at innovation, it is because they mismanage those stages. So I'm going to pull my notebook closer. When you mismanage the stages of innovation, you either seal your fate of the innovation failing or you cause it to delay and stagnate. And then that results in staff frustration. It results a lot of times in more money. So the costs get higher and it dilutes the potency of the innovation. So if you could innovate using 2 people in 5 days, and instead it takes you 7 people rotating in and out in 3 months, by the time you get done with that, I could guarantee you it's not going to be nearly as effective as you thought, unless you miscalculated the timeline to begin with, which is its own issue, and that gets the planning. But generally, when you just dragging it, don't nobody want to deal with that, no matter how cool we thought the new thing was to begin with. The planning stages of innovation, this is where you not only assess does it need to occur, but you start to plan resourcing. How many people do we need? Do we have the right vendors? Do we know all the vendors that are available? Is this an acute or chronic problem? And that's a really important question, because sometimes we make a big deal out of something and we want to change the whole shebang. And it's really just something simple that we can leverage using our existing resources, and you can just refine something and evolve an existing product or service or process. When you move on from planning, so now you've assessed your resources. Is this an acute or chronic problem? Yes, this needs to occur. Yes, we can get access to the right people, to the right technology. We've appropriately assessed the landscape to think about all of our options. Now we move on to selection. And selection means that you leverage things like free trials. Y'all, I'm good for a free trial. Don't let me have 7 or 14 days to work on something. I will hold out on signing up for something until I could have time. Allocate time to play with something, explore it, test the email notifications, test the sign up experience, test the graphics, test how cumbersome it is, test if they make me log in every time or if I could stay signed in. I mean, all the things that I know matter to me, I really commit to playing with that and testing it out. And sometimes I'll even do a quick paid trial. So very rarely will I sign up for something on an annual basis the first time. I almost always do monthly first, because I want to see how I like this, if this is working for me. And if it's not, I cancel something quick. I do not play like that. So give yourself time to experience the selection process and really assess what matters to you. I mentioned earlier, always go by the least technologically capable person in your company when you're doing something. And technology could mean actual computers, it could mean use of systems and processes. Whoever is the least savvy, cater to that person. Because your people who are very savvy or who pick up on things quick, or the folks who love doing stuff new, love learning stuff, they're going to grab a hold to it. This they jam. The folks who don't, that's who you need to manage to. So who doesn't know how to do something? Manage to their deficiencies. And no, that doesn't make them a bad person, because again, people could be amazing at some other part of the company. They could be amazing at their job. They're just not good at that. And that's okay. Moving on from selection, now that you selected a vendor, a process, a point person to do something, what you're going to innovate, then you want to start to test. And testing means that you create, in some cases, a test environment. I had a really cool job in HRIS. I worked for the city of New York many years ago now. And we did nothing but sit up and test HRIS environment. So where you log in the system to see your paycheck and update your address and uh, hire people and promote people and change people's pay rates. That was the system that we worked on for the city. And it was huge. It affected like 400,000 people. There were 100,000 administrative employees who were responsible for that system. And I mean, it was a lot, but it taught me so much about technology. And we had an entire system that was just for testing. So there was the live production system. That's what we called it. That's the one people actually used. But there was a whole other system that looked exactly like that we would use to test. And we had fake logins and fake exercises we would have to test on in order to help people with help desk requests, in order to resolve issues. And if we could replicate the problem in the test environment, then we would use that to troubleshoot and solve it. Now, you might not necessarily have the bandwidth, the capability, or even the need to create an entirely different testing environment. But the key point to remember here is that the test environment was simulating the real challenge. So remember, when you're testing something, you're trying to simulate, you're essentially trying to break it. So what's all the ways that we can use this and push it to its limits based on our needs to determine if this is right or if we need to make refinements. That process is important. And that's probably where you want to spend the most time, because after you launch something, which is the next step, you dramatically increase the likelihood of frustration from end users, from staff, from vendors, because they're expecting it to work. When people hear the word launch or this is happening, something's in production, they don't expect to be testing. They need it to work 100%. So all of your plan and experiment needs to happen in that testing space. Speaking of launching should feature an element of wow. So when you innovate on something, the way you describe that innovation and the way you talk about it, the happiness that you feel, the way you smile, the way you hype it up, strongly impacts adoption. People don't know that they shouldn't like something until you tell them, a lot of times. You can do a lot. It's like with toddlers and kindergartners, and I say that only because children are in awe of so many things. They love stuff. I mean, you could cut their pancakes in a different way, and it's like, so a lot of us enjoy that delight, that wow factor of seeing new features or new elements of something, or we feel like we're getting something special that's just for us or something more than we paid for. You want to inspire that awe and delight in your customers, in your partners, in your end users, in your team. And when you inspire that delight, it produces an excitement, not just for that feature or that change, but for you as a whole. Because all of us like to feel catered to. And I would just be careful in the way you describe a launch, that like I've seen companies say, "Hey, we heard you, we're correcting this problem," versus approaching it to say, "Hey, we have something new that's going to make you feel amazing about shopping with us. Hey, we have something new coming up that's going to make you feel great about working here." That little nuance of change in how you describe the launch will help people focus more on the benefits than pain alleviation, which keeps them in that emotional state of pain, even though you're talking about alleviating it. Then, when you think about refinements, after you launch it, you don't just launch it and walk away. You have to refine it. So you're paying attention to things like the feedback on it. So I've had clients, when I launch something new, it could be a new invoice type, it could be a new email signature, it could be anything. And they'll tell me, "Hey, it's a typo on here. Hey, this isn't set up right. Hey, we would like if you would do this instead." I love that feedback. And they're always respectful when they do it, but I like it because you develop a blind spot to things that you create. When I work on something, I build it from scratch. That's why I never send stuff out the same night. I try to always give myself a day or at least time to sleep on it, because you have looked at it so much, you're going to miss things. But fresh eyes who have never seen it, a lot of times the mistakes are glaring, and it feels good for people to know that you have that much trust that they can tell you like, this kind of missed it. And then you refine from there. I go to my clients and I ask for feedback. Hey, what did you think of this? Could this have been better? And then once they give me their feedback, so I don't skew them, then I'll share, hey, because I was thinking about this. Would that have helped? Would that do da 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 da? And they'll tell me, yeah, that would have been good. Ooh, try this. We did this with such and such. Hey, this worked the other time, blah, blah, blah. Like people will be very honest. And that type of honesty builds intimacy. I didn't mention this so far, but the goal of innovation is to improve the relationship that you have in order to stabilize your company's growth. And I know that sounds weird, to stabilize growth, but you want to always be in a state where you're doing better than before, not just in revenue, not just in units sold, but also in the way people think about your company and to people's willingness to hear your company. There are companies that have burned out their reputation so bad with things that to even hear the company's name is like, eh. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that person. And you don't want to be that company. So that innovation builds that intimacy where people can tell you, yeah, what's going right and what they love, but also what's not going right. And that'll help you to innovate faster and avoid letting problems just blow up before you have a chance to correct it. Moving past refinement, so now you're working on it, fine tuning things. Adoption is another really, really important part of innovation. Employees, vendors, partners can make or break anything new you do. If employees are not bought into this change and they secretly looking for ways to sabotage, it's over with. And y'all know I've worked in change management, what is it, strategic planning, organizational change, organizational development my whole career. Let me tell you something. I don't care how sweet you think something is. I don't care how many consultants you paid. I don't care how much you bonused out the people who made the change. If the end employees who got to do that every day decide, no, this is some junk and I'm not doing it, you can forget that. You can forget it because they are going to sabotage that thing happily. Happily, I have seen my coworkers get together around the water cooler, the coffee machine, plan and organize lunches and happy hours to plan how they go sabotage the change. I mean, they worked on that thing. So do not underestimate the importance of adoption, and that involves communication. Feedback. When somebody tells you something is not working, really listen to them. Again, they do it every day. Sometimes, and that's why I wanted to get y'all out of thinking of innovation as simply a technological change, because sometimes we over rely on technology. Like some things, yes, it's done manually. Some things, yes, it might be slower than you think it should be, but that is the best way to do it. Everything cannot be outsourced to technology. Everything, it can't do it. You cannot do it. Some things a person has to touch that. They have to have the deep conversation. They have to manually review. I had a client and I was telling them, I was like, they were like, yeah, well, how can I just automate sending out independent contractor forms? And I was like, don't. I said, because somebody could be signing Mickey Mouse on that contract and you just told DocuSign or whatever, once it's finished, it's finished. You haven't reviewed it. A person didn't go back and look, and now that person working 8 months, you trying to fire them for cause and can't, because technically this document was invalid and you never called them on it. You waited 8 months before this ever became an issue that you raised. So there are tons of things, especially in that HR functional area, legal functional area, finance functional area. No, ma'am, no, sir. You need to be going back and looking at that. And a person needs to touch that. A person needs to do a forensic audit. A person needs to review the forms. A person needs to sit down and review the contract. A person needs to sit down and ask questions and understand need and then make refinements from there. That's a part of adoption. A person. A person. And if you lose your prioritization of people in the adoption process, I'm telling you that sabotage is going to happen whether you like it or not. All right. Next is maintenance and management. And that's closely tied to adoption too, because people are maintaining things, even if people is a company. If it's a vendor company, it's still a person who got to run that company. And maintenance of innovation is the way you avoid stagnating or becoming obsolete. It would be a shame for you to invest all that time in planning for it and selecting somebody and testing and launching. And then because you didn't consider that Timmy from accounting has to be the person to check over blah, blah, blah. Now you can't. You didn't have the right science background for the person who's working on that. And it was a simple certification that you could have paid for them to go get. All of that matters with innovation too. Because as soon as you innovate, your competitors are either trying to follow you or outdo you. As soon as you innovate, the second that you innovate, somebody else is coming behind you. And you could look at the social companies for that. So as soon as Instagram came out with a feature, boom, Twitter was coming out with that same feature. And as soon as Twitter would come out with a feature, boom, YouTube gonna try to do something like that. So again, your competitors are watching you in addition to doing their own innovations, but they're paying attention to you. So your new thing won't be new for long if you don't have someone there to maintain it and manage that newness. Because you want it to feel new as long as possible. You want that delight, you want that wow factor, you want to grab as many early adopters as possible, you want to become the mainstay, and that only happens through maintenance and management. And finally, the feedback loop. So even after you innovate, how you maintain your innovative lens is through listening to what people say. Yes, you can do the net promoter scores. You can even do pop-ups asking for the feedback survey, whatever the case may be, but also pay attention to social impressions, pay attention to how people even come up to you in person. It's interesting because I go to a lot of conferences and in-person networking events or even virtual ones. And a lot of feedback, I would say 30 to 40% of the feedback that I receive actually comes from people who feel like strangers to me who come up to me at these events. I had somebody recently, I never knew that they followed me. They never liked or commented on any of my posts anywhere. But they came when they said, I really like your content. You could tell that you know what you're talking about. And I was like, what? I didn't even know this person was paying attention. And that's happened several times. I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I really liked such and such webinar. Oh, I saw blah, blah, blah appearance that you did. Oh, I checked out your website. You don't know who is watching. And the more you can appear in the market to receive feedback, the better it will be because everybody won't send the customer service or support email. Everybody won't like or comment on social media. Everybody won't DM you, but that doesn't mean they aren't talking. And if you don't show up in enough places, either you personally or have your company positioned in the right spot to get that feedback, you will either head towards being obsolete, you will stagnate, or you will experience the negative consequences of innovation, which is the last point I'll make, and that is over innovating. It is possible to innovate too much. And usually, innovating too much means that you mismanage these stages. So, if you tend to go from planning to selection to testing to launch to planning, selection, testing, launch, and you don't do the refinement, the adoption, the maintenance, the management, the feedback loop, people will get tired of you. And we're seeing that right now with tech companies where it's like, fam, I just want to, all I wanted to do was log in, and I'm tired of y'all changing. This happens a lot with food and beverage companies. And I'm laughing because you'll be in the grocery store, people just hollering down the aisles because they mad because because their favorite thing changed. I ain't want that new flavor. Where's the old flavor? It happens all the time. Trader Joe's is a good example. It's a good example of this. Funny story with that. Trader Joe's came out with, it's actually two cookies. What is it with them and cookies? It was two cookies. One was this like four flavor almond cookie. I'll never forget it. This came out in about 2018. I still remember these cookies to this day. These cookies were so good, y'all. They came in one of the little plastic bins, like up where it's off of like the refrigerator aisle. Them cookies were so good. And I'm like, oh, next time I go back, I'm gonna grab some more of these cookies. I go back to go grocery shopping like normal. Them cookies was gone. Where are the cookies? Oh, we don't know if we're bringing them back. What? Last year, I go, I see these little cookies by the register. I'm like, apple shortbread cookies. It's the fall. Love apples. Let me grab these. I was like, yeah, I need a snack for the car. I'm starving. I ate one of them cookies before I knew it. The sleeve was gone. I went back because I know how they be playing now. I'm like, let me get like $6. So I was like, I know they gotta have this through the rest of the fall. Like, there's no way that they would take it away before fall is over. About 3 weeks later, them things was gone, and I've never seen them again. So this happens a lot. People still love Trader Joe's. I still love Trader Joe's. Shout out to y'all. But it's just a point that sometimes you can innovate so fast, it will turn some people off. And it will frustrate people who want to love your brand so much, but they can't because the thing that they love, that they attached to the love of your brand, that they attached to that delight, you snatched it from them. And love in business is funny because love can easily turn to hate, and you don't always know what that trigger point is. It's like a it's like a bad relationship, and you be thinking like, "Oh, I got like 3, 4 more chances. Like, we good. This is just a regular argument." Not knowing, nah, they ain't gonna never call you again. They done. So because you don't always know what's gonna be that final nail, just don't even tempt people like that. I'm excited for y'all to keep thinking about these concepts. Like I said, all of these innovation stages should take place, but they're going to be different time lengths. I would spend the majority of my time in testing because it'll make the other stages much smoother. And again, they can happen across any of the 8 functional areas. I am actually going to wrap on that note because I didn't realize that I'm double booked today. And I have another speaking engagement that is starting shortly that I need to get to. But I hope that you all think this through. Again, I know that right now is a challenging time for small businesses. That's why I started Resilience University in this webinar series. But through prioritizing innovation, we're going to make it. Because it might just be the smallest of changes that you can make that'll get you through this season. Or maybe it's something really big, but regardless of the size and scale of the innovation, the goal is for you to manage it appropriately and apply it in the right functional area of your company to see success. So, of course, if you watch the replay, let me know in the chat, ask questions in the chat. I'm still going to be responding and checking in with y'all. And I look forward to seeing your thoughts. Let me know how you're innovating in this season, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, y'all. See you next week. We're going to be talking about legal considerations.